Need psychotherapy online or in person? Check out tinyurl.com/THT psychotherapy. The George Brassey podcast is made possible with funding provided from Brassey Global Strategies, LLC, a leading political consulting, public policy, government affairs, and research firm. Are you interested in running for elected office? Need advice? Call or email George, 708-769-5015. Brassey Global Strategies 1@gmail.com.
Freeze doesn't stop Chicago Heights City Council from taking care of business. Freeze doesn't stop Chicago Heights City Council from taking care of business, Chicago Heights, Illinois, despite some members of the council being absent, freezing weather and meeting remotely due to COVID restrictions. On Tuesday night, the Chicago Heights City Council approved a number of projects to continue moving forward the city's beautification projects. Architectural services. With Alderman Vincent Zaranti sitting in as acting mayor for Mayor David Gonzalez, the council approved an agreement for architectural services with Tria Architecture. Under the $23,000 agreement, Tria will provide a space needs analysis of the municipal garage and water department facilities. The company will analyze existing facilities and determine whether an upgrade or a totally new facility is needed, based on current and future needs. Tria has provided architectural services for other local municipalities such as Country Club Hills, designing its amphitheater, storage and fleet maintenance facilities, and upgrading its recreational center. Morton Arboretum Grant. The council voted to accept an award of $15,000 from the Morton Arboretum, through its Urban and Community Forestry Grant. The grant will pay for a tree inventory of the city. Funding for the grant is provided by the United States Department of Agriculture Forest Service through the Illinois Department of Natural Resources Urban and Community Forestry Program. It offers urban and community forestry grants to municipalities, which are required to pass a tree preservation/protection ordinance before the end of the grant period. Engineering services. The council also approved proposals totaling $842,000 for engineering services for various city infrastructure projects. Chief of Staff Karen Zarant said the projects include sewer and resurfacing work around the city. The council approved an agreement with Grand Capital, North America, LLC, to induce the sale and development of the city-owned real estate at 560 and 570 West Lincoln Highway. Jack Hines, city economic development consultant, said the parcels are the sites of the former Lorenzetti's restaurant and car lot next to it. Grand Rapid Capital has done a number of developments in the city. In other business, Chief of Staff Karen Zarant gave the council an update on January's Illinois Department of Public Health vaccination clinic, hosted by the city. She said about 250 people registered online. The city plans to hold another vaccination clinic, in conjunction with IDPH, in February. Chicago Heights Fire Chief Jeffrey Springer announced the promotion of Captain Tony Mascalino to Assistant Fire Chief. The council approved a redevelopment agreement to induce the sale of the city-owned surplus real estate at 1902 Euclid Avenue, through the city's Abandoned Property Acquisition Program. And the city's city towing services agreement was renewed. Freeze doesn't stop Chicago Heights City Council from taking care of business.
Before we get to the interview, I just want to tell you about our newest sponsor, Union Signs and Printing. Union Signs and Printing is a union sign shop located near Chicago, Illinois, that specializes in the production of corrugated plastic lawn signs used in applications ranging from political and election usages to unions, schools, and businesses. They also produce a vast array of other products, including American-made, union-printed t-shirts, banners, bio cards, literature, door hangers, business cards, and trifold. Get a hold of Union Signs and Printing at 740-1688 or find them on the internet at unionsignsandprinting.com. And don't forget to tell them you heard about their services on the George Brassey podcast. I'm so glad to welcome our next guest to the podcast. Annette Bannon is currently a Board of Education member for the Homewood-Flossmoor School District. Annette, thanks for coming on my podcast.
Thanks for having me, George.
Annette, tell the audience a little bit about your journey to becoming a member of the school board.
Okay. First, I'll tell you, I am a lifelong Homewoodian. I've lived here my whole life. I'm a mom of two awesome adult boys, and I've always been involved in school activity when they've been in school. So a few years back, there were some changes in the school administration that I sort of heard about, but I also then noticed that a very reputable board member suddenly resigned, and that caught my attention. In the past, I had gone to HF board meetings when there were, high activity community things that were going on. I participated to help in the referendums. So I started to go to the meetings, and that's how I got involved. Things that I saw, I felt like perhaps different opinions on the board may bring a higher decision making for the different topics.
Talk about the perspectives that you bring to the board.
The perspectives I bring to the board, I'm a nurse and I've been in nursing leadership for over 42 years. I have a passion for our community, and I have strong interpersonal skills. I've had many various nursing leadership positions, from supervisory for local leadership to hospital administrator, big leadership, and managing both multiple inpatient or outpatient business focused units. So most recently, I opened and managed an interim inpatient COVID unit, actually. So my leadership background brings a mix of financial, budget experience, personnel, hiring staff, and ongoing quality improvement experiences.
In the course of my life in politics and my podcast, I'm learning that every community, every unit of government has a unique culture and unique issues. What is unique about the culture at HF? What are some of the issues that you feel you've addressed in your first term and that you'd like to address if you are reelected?
Okay, so HF's a great school. We believe it can be even greater. When I started to go to the meetings and started to consider being a board member, I met somebody, Beth LaRocca. The two of us ran together and are running together again now. And I think that the perspectives that we bring jointly are that we have perhaps bringing up curious questions. I think that the best decisions are made with a variety of opinions. And I think that the culture at HF, I think, is a good culture. I think that it's always good to continue to explore. HF's always been rated well, and we're looking to keep that rating well as elevate the students' academics so that we can continue to be one of the brightest in the area, because we know that that's why people move to the area, and that has to do with our home values as well.
What type of responsibility do you believe that the school district has for some of the higher property taxes in Homewood and Flossmoor?
Well, clearly, if you look at your tax bill, if you live in the area, the high school is probably the highest part. We know that. And so we have a great responsibility with tax levy as well. So it's very important decisions that we have to make, and we have to consider all points of view. We have to consider what the state is doing down in Springfield, and the national situation is like a pandemic we have right now. So we have to consider all of that. We have to consider when people move out of the area because of the taxes. And so all of that sort of affects our decisions.
What's been the hardest vote you've had to take so far as a board member?
I would probably say the tax levy was hard because there was a difference of opinion. And I know that the tax levy over time, when you pass that at the highest rate that we're able to, you're not able to take that away at some point. The taxes just continue to go, one on top of another. So I think that when we found out that we were able to do an abatement the last couple of years, that has made it easier to go ahead and go with the tax levy.
So if the audience wasn't familiar about the specifics, were you in favor of increasing the levy, or did you oppose increasing the levy?
I did oppose it 2 years, and then I passed it the last 2 years. And because there was an abatement where the residents got a refund on their following year check, or not checks, but on their taxes. So we felt that kind of kept it level.
You also mentioned the coronavirus pandemic. Talk a little bit about how HF, the school, has had to adapt to the pandemic.
Yeah, they've done a great job. Because they already had a lot of great technology system, they were able to quickly go to remote learning for the students and have adequate equipment for all the students at home as well. So the school has done well with that. We've had a lot of conversations about that. I think they're handling it well as far as the precautions that they're taking as we start to return to hybrid learning, where the students will eventually get back to classrooms. So I think that my experience in healthcare has helped myself and the board to, understand the importance of making sure that we put safety first. And I believe that that's what we've done. And I think that we're very happy with how it's proceeded for our school. Some schools did start back and then they had to stop going to school, go remote, but we didn't start back at all. We are starting to transition back now in March.
How has it been as a nurse for you during the pandemic?
Stressful. Frustrating sometimes when people think it's not real, or it's a bigger deal is being made of it than it is, because I've seen a lot of people die, and people not be able to be with their loved ones when they're sick. So making sure that all the resources are there for our caregivers too has been stressful, lots of hours, but it's just part of what you do when you do this business.
What is the biggest opportunity for Homewood Flossmoor School District, in your opinion?
I think one of the biggest opportunities right now is for the community to get the opportunity right now to elect people to the board who will truly listen to all sides of an issue, ask pertinent questions prior to voting on issues and making decisions. I think that while all the board members do that, I think that Beth and I take a different perspective. And I think that, again, different opinions are always make the best answer in the end, make the best decision later on. So I think that our opportunities there are to continue trying to be transparent. We're open to hearing from any of our stakeholders at any time. I think our actions show that we've got very high integrity, and we're never deterred from doing the right thing despite any barriers that may be involved.
What ways have you increased transparency at the district?
Well, we've been wanting, we would like to see videotaping. That hasn't been something that has gotten approved from the board. However, with this pandemic, we have Zoom meetings now. So actually the community has had an opportunity to be on the board meeting, to listen and to see us if they choose to. So that's been good. And we have had quite a few people on the board meetings. So while we haven't approved videotaping, the Zoom concept sort of accomplishes that right now. Not that that's forever. But I think also our agendas are now on the website. If anyone wants to see, they can see the exact same information that I get prior to the meeting. So if they have any questions, they can always bring those questions to the board. or have a comment about what we're going to vote on.
What has the resistance been, in your opinion, to filming the meetings?
Some believe that there are some legal opinions that have advised the board not to do that. And so we're trying to get the detail on that so that we can continue to further question that. But it's just a difference of opinion of the people on the board.
The difference of opinions with the people on the board, you mentioned that you have a running mate.
Yes.
Are you and her often the minority votes on the board?
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that dynamic.
Sometimes we are. Sometimes there might be 4-3 votes. There's 7 people on the board. It could be myself and Beth and other people, another person perhaps. Sometimes Beth and I do not vote the same way. And some of the things that we feel the community could benefit from, like the transparency of board meetings, that has definitely been where we're the minority. And so that's a little frustrating because many districts do that, but that is something that as a board, the decision's been made not to do that. And that's what we live with right now.
And I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving legal advice here, but if a resident hypothetically wanted to just show up to one of the school board meetings, they could film them and stream them themselves, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Oftentimes in a lot of communities, because I've had the same type of issue in Chicago Heights trying to get the meetings filmed. When you look at a lot of these communities, it's because there's dedicated residents that are there every week to film that in a lot of instances.
Yes.
Very interesting. So Annette,
yes.
You Homewood and Flossmoor, as an outsider, both look like they have pretty healthy civic cultures and they have a lot of active residents. But at least when it comes to the school districts, other communities feed into them. And as the alderman of the 5th Ward, which has a portion of it that goes to HF schools and HF where you're going to be a board member, can you speak a little bit to that audience for a minute?
Yeah. We feel strongly that all the communities who filter into HF are just as important. Chicago Heights, Glenwood, Hazel Crest, we have students from all of those areas. And so they all need to be at the table. I know that the school has meetings with the principal, has meetings, advisory meetings with the different students. And it's important that there's a mix from all the towns that are there, as well as if anybody has any feedback that they want to give us, we want, they're just as much of a part as the title of our high school, Homewood Flossmoor. They're just as much of a part. Absolutely.
Annette, one of the final questions we always ask our guests is to talk about 2 books that were influential to you as a person and why they were.
Oh, what a great question. I would say the book, The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren, that was very influential in my life. I think that that book sort of talks about a journey with a purpose. I believe everything does happen for a reason. So it sort of is in keeping with my own values and my character. It talks about cultivating community, deciding to influence as opposed to impress. So it's a really good book. The other book that really has influenced me is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. It's by Rebecca Skloot. I don't know if you've ever read that, but it's, pardon me?
I have never read that. Tell the audience.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good book. It's about a book of an African-American woman who in the 50s, the doctors took her cells without asking, and those cells never really died. And so they launched a medical revolution in a multi-million-dollar industry. And the family never found out about this, and her children did find out, but it was like more than 20 years later. And even to this day, I believe the family has never recouped any benefit from that. So it's a very good book, especially me being in healthcare. And I work at a safety net hospital. I can just imagine in the 50s and 60s how perhaps some healthcare givers thought it was okay not to tell the patients everything. And that's totally against everything that I believe for my job as well as my personal life. So I'm always very passionate about doing the right thing for the right reason. So that book was really interesting.
That made me want to ask you another question.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about the relationship between being a nurse and then going into public life as an elected official.
Okay, so it wasn't necessarily on my bucket list for me to be a public official, but it's the passion that drove me after attending meetings and seeing that perhaps there could be benefit from having a change of perspective. I didn't know Beth LaRocca before I started going to the meetings. I did meet her there because I felt like she had some very good ideas as well. She's an educator, and so we share a lot of our perspectives. So how that's changed me, was that the question, if I'm not mistaken, or how that's affected me being a nurse as well?
Yeah.
I think that while it's not really the nursing part, though it has come in handy this year with COVID, that makes me a good board member. It's my leadership, that I've been in leadership like over 40 years in my nursing career. So I think that the compassion that I have naturally kind of spills over into other areas. And I think that makes me, that's why I'm such a good listener and willing to look at all parts of a problem before I make a decision. And I think that people see that, and I think that they trust that. And I think that if they look at my actions, they would see that I do have high integrity and I'm trying to do the right thing.
Annette, tell the audience where they could find you on the internet.
They can find us at HF Residence for Excellence on Facebook, and they can also email us at hfresidenceforexcellence@gmail.com. And the 4 is the number 4, HF Residence for the number excellence@gmail.com. We're happy to take any questions or any feedback anyone has.
Annette Bannon, thanks for coming on my podcast.
Thanks so much, George. I've enjoyed it.
Take care.
Bye.
Help George stay on the Chicago Heights City Council. Go and donate today at tinyurl.com/AldermanGeorge 2023. Need more George? Like his pages on Facebook. Friends of George Brassey PAC, Fifth Ward Business Alliance, Chicago Heights Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center, and the George Brassey Podcast.